on Monday in Sacramento, when a protester decided that it would be a good idea to climb on top of a police car.
You can't stop the revolution! 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 You can't stop the revolution!
Here to help us better wrap our heads around some of the logic of some people that we just can't understand is nationally renowned forensic psychiatrist, Dr. Carole Lieberman. So, Doctor, I'm really glad to have you on the program tonight because there's been a lot of incidents as of recently where people are kind of just asking the question, why? So before we get into what you think is behind a lot of these practices, I first want to set the scene. Has there been an increase in violent crime or crime directed towards police officers?
Not only has there been an increase and no holds barred of the kinds of things that people are doing to the police, but we are becoming desensitized to it. What was shocking to us one night, the next night, we need to see something even crazier and more violent in order to pay attention to it.
I think that's an excellent point, and I think it really speaks to what's going on from a media perspective as well. I mean, nowadays, for example, if an incident like the most recent officer-involved shooting took place, oftentimes it would be weeks before we saw that type of footage. But nowadays, there's such a response on social media that the police department in this situation released the footage themselves, but oftentimes it's a video camera, such as the George Floyd situation. There's just so much more access now to these events, and I think people are having a hard time grasping this whole concept to begin with. But I do want to ask you as well, when it comes to this issue, Ricardo Munoz, he was a man who charged towards a police officer with a knife, unprovoked for the most part. I mean, the officer was responding to a situation there, but what do you believe is in the mindset of these individuals when they do such an action?
Well, we are seeing a new twist on suicide by cop. Suicide by cop has been a phenomenon where people who are depressed, disgruntled, angry, whatever, want to kill themselves, but either don't have the means or don't have the courage. And they create a situation, sometimes even walking into police stations, where they threaten the police with the expectation that the police are going to shoot them or do something to kill them. Well, now we're seeing, and Munoz is an example of that, now we're seeing people who not only are looking for a suicide by cop, but they have seen that if you get killed or injured by the police, you get a parade, a protest in your honor the next day. And so there is an incentive. It's kind of like terrorists, you know, who are become martyrs, and these people become martyrs. And we know with Ricardo Munoz, that in other incidents in 2019, when he knifed people and the police were called to his house, he was found with a knife to his own throat. So we know that he has been suicidal. And now, of course, you know, look what happens. He was killed, unfortunately, but surely, you know, going at a policeman, holding a knife above your head, what else can you expect? And now he is celebrated, and that is influencing other people to want to do something individually, even if it means they're going to get killed or they're going to get injured, but then they're going to be a celebrity.
And even that within itself is still a tragic situation. I mean, don't get me wrong, this appears to be a justified officer-involved shooting, but it's still a terrible thing that we can all acknowledge that someone is in the state of mind where they're so unhappy with their current state of life that they do want to be killed. And I know exactly what you're talking about. We've played videos on this program before where an individual will walk into a police station with a knife, and what else do you expect happens after that? I mean, the only reason you do that is to get caught, and the only reason why you don't put down the weapon is because you know the outcome that you're looking for regarding that. But when we talk about the idea of perhaps the media's input in this as well, is it a little bit like school shooter situations where the media for a long time didn't address them or didn't talk about them too much because they didn't want to glorify them or promote anyone else to do the same?
Yes. You know, these people know from seeing, I mean, they see protests in the media with signs with the face of the latest person. Of course, George Floyd is the, you know, predominant example. But we've seen other people. We've seen, for example, the man who was injured and is now in a hospital bed and doing video tapes from his hospital bed, Jacob Blake, yes.
Right, in Kenosha, yes.
And right. And so, I mean, you know, that is very appealing, especially to someone who feels that their life is meaningless and is depressed and so on. And yes, of course, ideally, they should get mental health treatment and not be in this kind of situation.
Yeah, and I think that's something too. I mean, I know a lot of people in this country have dealt with someone who has mental health issues firsthand. It's a very rampant thing that's taking place in the country. I think it's something that every American can get behind in addressing those situations. But I think it's something too where it's ignored sometimes when, for example, in this situation, people don't want to say that this individual might have had mental health issues. They want to say that this was an officer-involved shooting. They like to play that narrative a little bit, and it's a shame that politics has gotten involved because I think most people can get behind the idea of saying, we should try to prevent this from ever happening to begin with. I don't think we should wanting anybody to run at a police officer with the intent to being killed and try to address the root of this problem. So I thank you for bringing this issue up because I think it's an important one that could do a lot of good for a lot of people before it's too late. But Dr. Carole Lieberman, it's always a pleasure having you on this program. Thank you for breaking down this issue.